Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hello, I am your host, Andrea Vacca, and I am very happy to welcome Larry Heller to the podcast today. Larry is the owner of Hello Wealth Management and is not only a certified financial planner and CPA, but also a certified divorce financial analyst. He's the host of the podcast Life Unlimited and the author of the book Retire Right. So Larry, welcome to A Better Divorce podcast.
Yeah. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me today. Looking forward to it.
Me too. I've been wanting to host an episode that's focused on financial issues related to people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or even later who are getting divorced. And we call that gray divorce here, or not just here, but a lot of people call that gray divorce. And so I'm really excited to have you on the show today so we can talk about that.
Yes. Somebody actually said we should change the word from gray divorce to silver divorce. It sounds a little better. So
that I like silver divorce. And from your perspective as a certified financial planner and CDFA, what do you think is different about someone divorcing in their 50s, 60s, 70s? I've even had 80s versus a younger couple.
yeah, absolutely. So, here you're either closer to retirement or possibly in retirement. So there may not be some more income coming in, or there is a finite amount of years before that income will stop. So really looking at retirement is part of the divorce settlement, where if you're much younger in your 20s and 30s, that's not as a key factor. So that's one of the things that we focus in on, either when you're getting close to coming up with a settlement or after the settlement is done. How does that play out?
Yeah, there's just less time to work too, to really make the money that you want to make. You don't have all those years ahead of you. So it's more finite. Like, this is probably what you're earning is what you're going to be earning. And retirement is on the horizon. And people have a certain standard of living that they've become accustomed to. How will we make this work? It's not, there's not enough wiggle room, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not as much time. And there's certain other tax ramifications if somebody is already in a drawdown stage for the required minimum distributions, or depending upon, Social Security. That's one of the conversations that we have when you're going through a divorce. You may be closer to when you are going to take that Social Security, either yours or your spouse's. So there are a couple other conversations to have along those lines, especially if you're looking to do a settlement and the required minimum distribution is coming up. You may have to start drawing down from there. So there are a little other nuances as you get older.
Right. Yeah. And often, the one person is a little older than the other. Sometimes, not often, but that happens. And so they're in different situations. One might be still working, one might be retired or looking to retire. So you're not always in the same place either, the two of you. So.
Right. And the other factor is that you're older, and one may be younger than the other one, is that they now have, though there may have been one non-financial spouse, and they would have been out of the workforce for a lot longer than somebody that's in their 20s and 30s. And so now that non-financial spouse, how does that impact them? What do they do? Do they look at this stage in life to go back and bring some income in, or how does that impact somebody older going through it later in life?
Yeah, I mean, somebody divorcing in their 50s is going to be in a very different situation than someone in their 60s or 70s who's been out of the workforce. Sometimes
absolutely. I'll give you an example of one we just went through. So this was a couple that our client was the dad. Now, interesting, the dad was a stay-at-home dad. So he had been taking care of his two young boys. The wife was out in the financial world, high-powered financial world, when they got divorced, and he was out of the workforce for over 20 years. So one of the things we got when he was getting close to a settlement and he brought us in to kind of look at that, he was worried, what happens if I can't find another job? He was still in his early 50s, so he still had a long time to go, but he was concerned if he wasn't able to go back into the field that he hadn't been in 20 years. So we ran a lot of the analysis and we were able to come up with that he doesn't have to go back to work. If he does, that would be great. So this was a total relief for him because he was just really concerned about that.
Yeah. When we have clients who know that they will have enough, it's such a relief. They can look at different options. They don't feel as scared. They can say yes more easily, but they need that analysis and they need someone who understands divorce financial analysts to do that analysis, to do that for them. And I mean, whether you're the stay-at-home or you've been working, let's talk a little bit about retirement planning in general. So with regard to the divorce, typically in New York, all retirement assets acquired during the marriage are going to be divided equally. But we often see a spouse with less retirement savings perhaps trade their rights to the other's retirement savings in exchange for another asset, such as the home. That's pretty common, right? But if you're working with somebody like this, what do you advise someone who is divorcing to consider about taking retirement savings, how to use them, what to do with them before and after the divorce? Is there any advice you have around
Absolutely.
retirement?
So the amount of taxes and the after tax return that you would have both on the sale of the house or the withdrawals from a retirement plan should be factored in to see how you can equal that out after tax. So that's critical in determining what would be a fair solution. And emotions sometimes come into this, and that somebody wants the house versus not wanting the house, so that may be some not exactly equal, but you want to know that in a lot of scenarios, whether you're separating that or even when you're doing discussions. We were brought into unfortunately a little bit late in the process after divorce was finalized. Somebody brought us in, and this person did not want to pay spousal payments. So he told his attorney, I don't want to pay spousal payments. They put everything together for a lump sum. And then when he came to us, we said, do you realize now that you're going to have another $250,000 in taxable income? Because in order to be able to do this lump sum settlement, you have to liquidate some of your assets to be able to do that. And he was not very happy because it wasn't mentioned that to him. So knowing the tax ramifications sometimes and looking at the different assets to make sure what's equitable is definitely comes into play.
That was probably a very emotional decision that client made about, I don't want to pay spousal support, spousal maintenance, and I'd rather just give him or her a lump sum and be done with it. And their spouse was probably thrilled to get a lump sum because now they can move on, they can get married, they can invest it, they can do whatever they want. So it's a great. Unfortunately, you had to point it out too late. It was after he signed in this situation.
Yeah, and this scenario was after he signed, so it was already done, signed, and sealed. And that the importance of bringing somebody in or having somebody look at their current investments to say, okay, what is it going to cost you if you want to kind of do this, so you can understand that. So in this scenario, unfortunately, was after the fact.
Yeah, I think understanding the tax ramifications of the retirement income that you're earning, with the spousal support you're getting, with capital gains taxes you may be paying. This is all interconnected. You really can't look at anything in a silo, right? Like, it's a whole.
Absolutely. And as far as retirement plans, a lot of times it's a 401k and it's kind of easy to see, but there are still people out there that have these defined benefit plans, and they're not so easy to really kind of figure that out as well. And we've seen some cases where the quadros were not done exactly the way we thought that was. And if you're a gray divorce, these could be pretty large numbers. So making sure that that's taken care of and looked at from a tax scenario and an actuarial scenario as well.
Yeah. So a quadro is a qualified domestic relations order, and a defined benefit plan is what a lot of people refer to as a pension, right? These are
Correct.
just to
Correct.
clarify
Thanks
what
for
we're
pointing
talking
that out.
about
Yep.
here. So for anyone listening, if you're dividing a retirement account, such as a 401k or a pension, you do need a special order. And these orders are qualified domestic relations orders, which we call quadros, are very carefully drafted, have to be approved by the plan. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. And we use special quadro drafting companies. We don't do those ourselves because they're so technical and they're so important to get right. So just a little pointer out
Yep.
there. So you want to make sure your quadro is correct so that you get the money that you're expecting to get. What about long-term marriages where we mentioned one spouse, maybe, well, even if they were working, I see that just like taking out the garbage or making the bed or buying the groceries, people find their way to do one thing in a marriage. Like they have their tasks, and
Mhm.
managing finances seems to be something that one spouse will primarily or solely handle. It's just very common. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's usually the higher earning spouse, but sometimes it's not. So the less knowledgeable spouse about finances may not have much information about what the assets are, what the liabilities are, what you're spending, what
Mhm.
they're even earning. Like they don't even know what money is coming in. So when you're working with the less financially savvy spouse, how do
Mhm.
you help them get up to speed, especially in a long-term marriage? There's a lot to learn, a lot of knowledge that they don't have. What do you do as in your role?
Yeah. So a lot of them need a lot of handholding, and some of them haven't even really paid bills in a long time, and they just remember the old checkbooks, and that's the way they've done that. So yeah. So we kind of go through that. I also have a few other certified financial planners on staff, and a woman financial planner as well, who works very closely with some of the non-financial spouses, trying to get them up to speed and get them all these kind of things taken care of. We actually have a 10 steps that we go through with anyone that's kind of gone through a divorce, to go through this really slow. And the first thing, even before we go through the cash flow, we kind of talk to them about, don't rush and make any decisions without really evaluating everything. Whether, I guess, it's gray divorce or younger divorce, one of the big questions is either should I buy a new house? How long should I stay in my house? And I want to buy another house. And is that the best thing to do right now? Or should I, or we talk about maybe you should rent first. It's not always a bad thing to rent, especially if you're going to be going to another area. So really going through those numbers and figuring out what is the right thing to do, both emotionally and both financially, and what you can afford. So a lot of those questions come up with in the beginning. So that's really kind of our step one. Step three in our process, well, actually, step two is kind of create the net worth statements, but step three is really creating a cash flow analysis. So they know exactly, okay, what's coming in from income, how much, if you're receiving spousal support or child support, you still have a young child, how long that is going to last. And when that stops, what's the game plan? So even if it's going to last for years, you want to kind of see what the income is going to be afterwards, and how does that compare to your expenses. So you start to get a feel. And when we go through some of these analysis, it starts to lift some of the weight, hopefully, that what they're planning on doing is going to work. And once they say, hey, this is going to work, or this is what I need to do, or this is what I can spend, they can start thinking about their life after divorce and saying, okay, I'm going to be okay in this scenario.
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned, it's emotional as well as practical steps that you need to take, because a lot of it is mindset and a lot of it is fear and unknowing, and you have all these voices in your head telling you what, or people in your head telling you what to do. So really having a map and a plan and a model for how this could work takes so much pressure off of people. And your attorney probably isn't the best person to do that for you. Okay. Like, your attorney can probably do a very quick snapshot of what you have, but we're not going to be modeling your financial future for you and really doing a real cash flow analysis. You need an expert to do that. And so someone like Larry is really going to be the best person to lay it out for you. So when another thing that people divide or have in a long-term marriage is businesses.
Mhm.
There's been a business established during the marriage. The business has been very good to the family, to the marital lifestyle. It's providing income. It's providing, maybe the cars are paid for by the business, or the cell phones are paid for by the business. Vacations may be paid for by the business. There's a
Yeah, the
lot that
IRS
goes
isn't watching this video, right, Andrea?
and it's all okay, right? I mean, your business can pay for certain things that your family can take advantage of. So, and it's not like you're skirting the tax laws, but you can write off the car because it's a business expense and you can still, use it. So then the marriage ends, and one person who owns the business is going to be getting still of these benefits of being a business owner. And I don't know, anything that comes up there when we talk about dividing a business or the lifestyle that a business can afford a couple.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of leave that to to yourself and the matrimonial attorneys to kind of figure out what's the fair the fair settlement along those lines. But just knowing that, yeah, their expenses may increase because some of these things they didn't have to pay for before. So factoring in health insurance. So if you're getting divorced now and you no longer be able to get health insurance through your spouse, what do you do? If you're older, 65, you can go on Medicare, but if you're younger than 65, maybe you can go on Cobra for a few years and then become there. But if not, if you're in your 50s and you have a long time before you're eligible, what is the cost going to be? Not just the premiums, but possibly the out of pocket that you may not have had beforehand. So, so looking at all the different insurances, it's another one of our steps, is reviewing all the insurances, making sure that you have the right life insurance or disability insurance. And we're not insurance salespeople or brokers, but we'll look at that and say, okay, there's a hole there. We need to kind of do that and coordinate that with an expert in that area. So, so some of the things off the business that you might have been taken care of, now you're going to have to factor that in your cash flow analysis.
Because typically when a business is divided in a divorce, you're not literally dividing the business. There's some valuation of the business and maybe a buyout of cash or exchange again for another asset. And then you have to use that buyout and cash to help support the new lifestyle and these expenses, and really understanding what all those expenses are and will be, even if you weren't paying them directly out of pocket, is really important. What comes up for me when you were talking about health insurance is sometimes we have to really look at, is this the right time to divorce? You may negotiate your settlement agreement, but I've had clients that are not able to go on Medicare yet, and need to stay married so they can stay on the health insurance of their spouse until they're ready to get Medicare. And then we will file the agreement. So if you can resolve your divorce outside of court in a more collaborative way, these are negotiations and conversations you can have with your spouse, so that you kind of put the divorce off if everyone's okay with that, so you can stay married. Because once you're divorced, you're getting your own insurance. You're out in the market.
Right. Or, if you got to go to the marketplace before having a settlement, if you wanted to get divorced, determining what the cost is going to be. I know we've done that and gone to the marketplace and say what the cost is going to be out of pocket, and that's been added back into the settlement. So to take care of that as well. So that's another way of kind of looking at it.
Sure. If whether it's COBRA costs or private insurance, or even through your own employer, that maybe it's a higher cost. And so it all
Mm-hmm.
needs to be factored in. So there's different options there. What about after divorce? You mentioned a few things that you have a
Mm-hmm.
list of 10
Yep.
steps or,
10 steps.
um,
Yep. So I'll
yeah,
mention some of the other ones. One of the ones we talked about the insurance, but one of the other factors too is checking all your beneficiaries. This is a fun one that we've uncovered a couple things after divorces is that because you have a beneficiary on your 401k plan, your IRA, your life insurance, and we've actually, when we bring on new clients, we not only just ask them that, but we want documentation of who the beneficiaries are on all their accounts. And there have been more than one instance where a ex-spouse is still named as the beneficiary. So one of the steps is making sure you go through all the beneficiaries and you update those beneficiaries.
okay.
Um, Another step now is, like you said, especially maybe the non-financial spouse, they may need some new advisors. They may need a new accountant. Some of the things are going to be taxable, especially in New York State. There are certain things that will be taxable. Your spousal, the receiving of your spousal payments, not federally but state. So you may need a new accountant. So that's another step. And then you're just after we've done your cash flow and you've done this settlement and your assets are divided. Now, how do you invest them? So what's the best way of doing that? Are you keeping some of the investments? So some of the investments that are split, do they have inherited capital gains embedded into them that you've now taken on? So before we talked about splitting a qualified an IRA or 401k on your house, but now even the different types of investments is if you're getting cash versus if you're getting stocks that may have grown, now you have inherited taxes in that. So how do you put together a new investment strategy for you, and how do you do it the most tax efficient way? So those are a couple other of our 10 steps that we'll discuss after a divorce.
There are so many important issues to talk about. And I think people, when they're finally done with the divorce negotiations, they're pretty exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So when do you suggest people kind of bring their heads back up and think about, I need to look at where I am, where I'm going? Is there some time frame that you think people should think about?
So, it's different for everybody when they're kind of, emotionally ready for different decisions. And that's why our first step is, evaluate, don't rush. But there are certain things that you really want to do fairly quickly. Like I mentioned, you want to, change your may want to change your beneficiaries, and it may get a little bit more complicated because now you're not naming your spouse as your beneficiary, but you may have minor children. So you may not want to name the minor children as a beneficiary. So updating your wills and all of your documents, your power of attorneys, your healthcare proxies are probably a little bit higher on that list. So we'll go through all this list and we'll try to do it over the course of a year and kind of see, emotionally where they are at. And so we can incorporate this over time. Some people want to just kind of move forward and make all these changes relatively quickly. Some want to do it, a little bit slower. So just making sure that they know all the things that they have to get done or that are important to get done gives them again a little bit of a peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So just understand what you need to do. Then you can make a plan, realize what's more important. I agree with you that making sure your beneficiaries are correct, your estate plan is correct, because anything can happen. And you need to have that settled. And then the other pieces can be laid out when you're ready to do that. I really appreciate that you mentioned buying versus renting, because I think that's an emotional decision many clients make, especially those who have been owned homes for years and are perhaps selling the marital home, they automatically think, I have to buy, I can't rent, it's throwing money away. And yet they don't really know what all the plans are. So I'm always heartened to see when people are ready to think to take a step back and a breath and think, okay, maybe I will rent for a while. And then when I follow up with these clients, they seem they have not bought. They're very
Mhm.
happy renting. It's been actually a relief for them. So I don't know. What do you think your advice is generally on that issue?
Well,
When do you know?
yeah, again, a house there's also there's a financial part and there's an emotional part of the house. So you have to look at both of those, and you also have to look at what's going on in the economy at that particular time. A few years ago, there might have been more advantageous to buy. Interest rates were much lower, so if you wanted to get a mortgage, or if you qualified for a mortgage, or even the prices were. Now the prices are higher, interest rates are higher, so maybe it's not the opportune time from a financial standpoint. But it's also where you're going to be and call home and be comfortable, especially after a divorce, is critical. Maybe it's just renting someplace just to get you to the emotional that you can see clearer on really where you want to be in the next phase of your life. So really determining those and having those conversations, both from a financial standpoint, and from an emotional standpoint, that takes time. I mean, you said people have rented for years. We've had clients do that. We've also had a lot of clients that have, especially if their children or adults children, have left. We have numerous divorce clients that have gone down to Florida. So and they've rented there for a while before they bought, to see if that's the lifestyle that they want. All of them that I have are extremely happy down there, but that was a big change in their lives. So knowing where you want to be and testing it out maybe is a good decision for you before you kind of step in and repurchase something. On the flip side, the person that has the house may be emotionally attached, that they don't want to give it up because they want the house, because they want to have it for their kids, maybe their adult kids to come back. And sometimes that house is appreciated so much that the settlement, the value in that, is going to be needed as part of the retirement plan. So knowing that factor and dealing with, when is the right time to do that, factors in, because now if you're keeping the house, there may be expenses, upkeep. You're now the only person in that house. So how does that factor in as well post retirement, post divorce?
Yeah, if you know that you're going to need, it's a really good point, because if you know you're going to need the equity in your home to help support yourself in as an asset, and to support yourself after later in your years when you stop working, it may be better to sell it while you're still married, because you get a higher capital gains deduction. You'll share in the cost of all the closing costs will be divided equally. So it's always important to think, will you be selling this in a year or two? Do you want to be responsible for all of that then? Um, or might you want to sell sooner? So weighing that out too. When do you plan to sell? When will you need the equity out of this home? And working with someone like Larry to figure that out and really look at, with a fine tooth comb, like what will this cost me now versus later, is very important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. There's a lot of different factors that come in, as you can see. Some are, investment related and financial related, but it's like you said, it's a big puzzle, and you want to try to kind of put this puzzle together, as you said, map this out, and mapping it out and having a plan. It just gives people so much, peace of mind when they have a plan versus not. So when we see, especially gray divorce, older divorced people, or the non-financial, when they first get divorced and all the worries and all the uncertainties, versus after going through all these steps and where they are, and how now they can put that part of their life behind and start looking forward, is rewarding for the kind of work that we do.
Yeah, definitely. On my side too, knowing that people are coming to an agreement that makes sense, that is durable, that will support them and provide them with the life that they hope to have after their marriage ends. I mean, what you really can't hope for anything more. So thank you. So my last question for you today, Larry, is what I ask all my guests, and I'd like to know from your point of view, what is your one better divorce tip?
Huh. Well, I think we've covered that. We've covered them all. But the one divorce, and I think part of things that you kind of preach is doing it on a collaborative type of scenario. That if you can do this, it's a tough time for both spouses. But if you can do this in a semi-amicable way, one, you can save some money on legal fees by doing that. So really trying to see if you can get this done amicable, so you can kind of get past this and on to the next stage of your life, and going through all the financials so you understand exactly what that is and what your is going to be, is probably my best tip that I can offer.
All right. A great tip. Yes. Do this as amicably as possible. You'll just have so many more options and be able to move on with your life if you can do it that way. So thank you. I totally agree with that tip. I agree with all the tips, but that one I really agree with. So how can someone find you, Larry, and everything all the information that you offer?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. So you can go to our website, hellowealthmanagement.com, and actually those 10 tips are there on our website on the divorce section. So feel free to download that document. So you can actually go to our website. If you want to schedule a call with myself or one of the other advisors here, you can book a call right there online, or you can feel free to give the office a call at 631-248-3600.
Okay, well, thank you. It was really wonderful talking with you today.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. It was a lot of fun, Andrea.
Thanks, Larry. So if you or someone you know is contemplating divorce and want to know what options are available to have the least adversarial divorce, as we just talked about, you want to download our free ebook, Divorce Without Court, A More Peaceful Solution, where we explain the differences between mediation and the collaborative divorce process and help you find the best process for you and your situation. So you can click on the link in the show notes and we'll get that right out to you. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe, and this will help others who are seeking a better divorce to find us. This has been another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.